Welcome, Christina Landman. We look forward to your keynote this morning. And it is titled The Ethics of Pastoral Intervention in Township Wars. Thank you, Christina.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Reverend Maton, for the impressive, undeserved curriculum vitae. It sounded to me like too much curriculum and too little vita. But time has now come to embrace the vita part. Brothers and sisters, okay, I know in some states not allowed anymore to address a conference in gendered terms. So we are not allowed, for instance, at the Oral History Association to say good morning, ladies and gentlemen, because it's genderizing people. So good morning, everybody. I'm going to talk on the ethical decisions a pastor has to take when intervening, not disrupting, intervening in township forms. Now, this will be simply in 3 parts. The first part, I will just tell who the research population is. Second one, on the ethical challenges when intervening in the wars that are going on in this specific community. And then the rest, the main part, will be stories, each time asking and inviting you to help and assist in what would be the ethical issues when intervening in these wars. So the research population is a peri-urban community in the Northwest Province, and they suffer mainly from excessive drug and alcohol abuse. In this area, you can find Burksa, Roman Catholics, Ethiopian Orthodox, mosque, Hindu facilities, and a large number of independent Christian churches in houses, hostels, and shacks. Now, one of the pastors in this community is a woman of mixed blood. Don't call her white. She has been classified as white, but she is of mixed blood. And she conducted the interviews or the pastoral discussions leading to the stories told in this paper. And the stories have been changed to avoid identifying anybody specifically. Now, this community, I still have to find a name for their specific spirituality. The community is religious, everybody's religious. But the Christian spiritualities are not post-secular. It's not that they've been secular and now they're returning to a post-secular position where they express themselves now again in religious terms. I would call them pre-secular, but so that doesn't really name it. What I can say is that what most of the people, if not all, believe is God is in control of everything. Everything happens according to his will. His will. God does good things to people, and God punishes bad people with suffering. And the devil has a name. I've never heard so many names for the devil there. The devil has a name. It's the bottle or other things which may not be related here. But what is important is that the pastor should not know about our pain. Pastor is the last one to know about our problems. You don't tell that, because in terms of honor and shame, you don't tell the pastor your problems. The pastor must think you're a good person and that God is good for you and God is on your side. But the pastor should pray. That's the thing the pastor must do. The pastor must pray, preach against evil. Okay, so the wars that I'm referring to is in this specific community, men beating women is not the main problem. On the contrary, they are very strong families, they're extremely strong families. It's the next generation, the children that are creating the wars, children threatening, physically hurting parents with weapons, community, and then the community reacting against the theft committed by those dependent on drugs, the drug lords, then acting against those who cannot pay. There are few instances, mainly secrets that men are assaulting their wives, that women are assaulting their husbands. And then there's, of course, internal tension in the church of who may the church bury? Who may the church bury? Can you bury a criminal? Can you bury somebody who has wonderful work there? Self-termination of Professor Daniel, he gave it to me yesterday, the self-word. So I'll tell a story of each of these categories and then just hint at the ethical decisions. And the ethical considerations which the pastor has to take into account is, intervening in congregants' private space, the ethical issues around that. Usurping religious authority has become a major issue in any community, even a pre-secular community. Imposing religious values. What religious values dare you as a pastor impose on people? And then the violating of church-state boundaries are very important because there are many laws now that protect people's privacy. When the pastor intervenes, the pastor is quickly reminded that, that's not your place. And then you have interreligious relationships, and what's very important is that the pastor must know where he or she has to intervene. And where he or she does not. Do you have the competency to intervene in gang wars? Do you have the competency? Is it wise? Is it ethical? Ethical. Okay, let's look at the first one. And this is about children physically hurting parents for drug money. The reverend was concerned when a regular churchgoer and his wife did not turn up for the church service on a Sunday morning. The reverend decided to call them. We missed you and your wife during the church service this morning. Is there a problem? My son kept me and my wife captive in the house this morning with an axe. He wanted money for drugs. Prof, they call the pastor prof because they didn't really know what to call a woman pastor, The pastor's wife is usually juffrouw. So now juffrouw prof or Tannie prof but prof, the children think my name is prof. Where can we go for help? We have approached the court to have him removed from the house, but the judge said, then where must he go? And the church help us. I'm not sure it would be, they cannot even pay their basic responsibilities. Do you think it will help by intervening and speak to your son? Please, Prof, this is his number, so the Prof calls the son. Then the son said, Prof, jou push. Moenie jou neus in my sorg steek. I shall get an arrestment order against you. So what are the ethical responses required from the pastor in this case? I would say, and I put question marks at the end. Is it wise to withdrawal from the son in the light of his threat for privacy? Is it engagement with the parents on their spiritual situation only? When refraining from assisting the parents in their legal actions against their son. These are ethical questions that come up, When can you intervene? When may you intervene? And let's go to the next story. Sorry, I think, yeah. No. Okay. This is in the same line of, I don't think this is the right one. Am I skipping some here? Yeah. No, that is right. In the second one is that in the same line, the reverend left the door of the vestry open while fixing something in the church that's only a few yards away. When the pastor returned, she found somebody in the study stealing. She ran out and she pushed the security gate against the person who was running after her. He tried to knife her and she had to let go of the door. He ran and jumped over the fence of the church. In the blink of their eye, the community got hold of him and they beat him badly. While in hospital, he threatened to sue the church. And then the ethical consideration is now, is the pastor and the church to get involved now with the community in trying to keep safe, in trying or is the church supposed to remain independent of the community? Because now the people from the community are threatening to sue the church because they have been, they feel that there was unethical in intervention. No, man, that was number 2. I still looking for number 2. Where's number 2? It's very strange. Now this is number 2 already. I can't see it. There's a community. Okay, thank you. Number 2, the one was now the children who are harassing their parents, and which is no man problem. I mean, who's going to tell the pastor that your child is harassing you? It's major war in the specific community. The second one is now the community reacting against of those getting drugs. Reverend, you know what happened to my son? He was on drugs, he stole everything in the house for drug money. I moved him out to an outside group with his brothers, also on drugs. And then he started stealing, breaking into other houses. The community caught him last week, breaking in. They threw him on the ground and pinning down with knives through his hands. They hit him behind his head. I pray he died. Will you please bury him? Now you must see. You cannot call the police, Dennis. Do not come. So the community has not taken over. Then the Reverend said, yes, I'm so sorry for your loss, but I'm sorry to ask, but are you members of the church? You have to ask that question. Yes, Reverend, but you're also going to fly to heaven with the Lord without spirit church. The pastor there does not want to bury him. But you buried somebody last week who committed suicide in the church while the congregants did not like that. And please, can the church council assist with money for the pastor, funeral priest? It was bad, my child, but he was a human being. And you have said that we are all children of God. I don't know, there's something wrong here. I don't know, it doesn't follow one of the others. Okay. Okay, this is the second story in the same case. I'm sorry, guys, it seems to be a bit mixed up. This is the one with the blippy. Now it's now really confusing. Yeah, that's yeah. Okay, you did that. Brothers and sisters, sorry, it's been confusing, but that's number 1 about children who are putting pressure on their parents for drug money. There's another story in this report. A congregant came to the pastory to borrow money from the pastor, and she said she had no money for electricity. And the pastor gave her 100 rand, knowing that she will not receive the money back. The congregant, it turns out, was under pressure from his son to give him the 100 for a Saturday night out. The next morning, the son was found dead in his room. The congregant told the pastor confidentially that she believed he has bought milk for 100 rand and that he died because of an overdose. She does not want the people to know that he overdosed, and that people should rather believe that he committed suicide. Means it? The problem is that the church council does not permit a person who has committed suicide, self-termination, to be buried from the church. That person may only be buried from the house and by the elder only, not the pastor. So the pastor convinced the church council to bury the young man from the church, with the pastor conducting the funeral. The pastor receives a message under the door of the pastory not to use the funeral as a means of inciting the community against the drug laws. While the funeral was being conducted, a gang killed a young man from another gang by burning him with a tire, the old style. The other gang retaliates by cleaving the private part of a member of the opposing gang with a knife and leaving him to bleed to death. How much do I? Okay, that is the ethical issue. Thank you. Okay, you'll do that. The pastor then, the ethical consideration then actually is with the church in, getting involved in the community by the actions against drug users and theft. Well, Ruud, doe jij dit nou op? Okay. Okay, let's take now three. Let's come to the third one. Sorry, we have 6, so let's move on. The third one we said, the third war that is very prevalent in this community is the drug laws for acting against those who cannot pay. Now, Derek is a congregant. He came to the pastor and he tells the pastor that he has discovered that his son is on drugs and the school has expelled him. And now Derek insists that the father insists that the pastor immediately intervenes. The pastor then intervened by doing the following. One, the pastor had a conversation with the son, but the son agreed to talk to the pastor only when the pastor offered him 100 rand for drugs. Now, the son revealed the following. He originally received drugs from the Springton school at an invitation to smoke with them for free. Other people from Africa, sorry, I hope, you know, in the townships, they call the drug lords Nigerians, whether they're Nigerian or not, they just call them Nigerians. Sorry that I have to say that, it's not me. Yeah. They visited him and offered him heavier debts, stole the money. And of course, when he could not pay for the drugs anymore, he was given to other men to rape. And his father took him to the clinic, and where they told him, well, he has brain damage, he has often brain damage. So what did the pastor do to intervene? The pastor visited the headmaster of the school from which he was expelled. So the first thing the pastor did was have an interview with this guy, for the son for which he has to pay. The pastor visited the headmaster of the school from which he was expelled, but the headmaster refused to take him back because he was still on drugs. The third thing, the pastor got some money to send him to a Christian rehab. After 9 months, he returned. He was really much better, but the school still does not want to take him back because he was over 15, over the compulsory school-going age, and his parents cannot pay school funds. And the pastor engaged the young man in the youth movement, the catechism, talks to the youth, etc. However, the father, Derek, insisted that the pastor intervened more drastically. The pastor must go to the school and, as a pastor, using that authority, tell the schoolmaster to take back the child. And the pastor must also confront the drug lords and tell them about the word of God. The pastor must go and convert the drug lords. That is what the father announced. So these are the ethical considerations about religious authority, how the pastors use your religious authority, especially if you don't have any more in any specific congregation. How much do you have? Do you have the right to go to school and tell the pastor you take back this child and go to the drug lords if you have for separate and tell them these are our religious values in this community and you better conform to them or you're in trouble with the church. Okay, let's continue to I've had further interviews with Eric the father, and he indicated that when he was young, he was also offered drugs, but he refused because he saw what he did to people. He saw his nephew chasing his uncle around and attacking him violently. He saw young men raping girls when they are home. And Eric indicated that people in the township, they grow dacha in their gardens, they sell it to the young, and you can simply find a Nigerian and he will deliver heavy drugs if you pay. That is why Derek said the pastor must intervene and stop these practices in the name of the Lord. I actually found other pastors. One pastor who was in a similar situation, I asked him, I heard that you have consulted with the gangs. How did it go? He said, not even my family was safe. Eventually my children are on drugs too. Nobody is safe. Okay, let's go to the next page, number 4. were men assaulting their wives. I've heard here papers claiming that this is one of the worst wars in South Africa. As I say, I think the no-name problem of children attacking their parents, that is the worst war we have, because we don't talk about it. Let's tell a story on this one. During a church council meeting, one of the women church council members received a WhatsApp and then a call. Although church council members do not take calls during meetings, one could see that this conversation. She answered it with fear on her face and then said, I have to go home, ran out of the meeting. And the church council members discovered the situation because it was not good church already practiced just to leave a meeting like that. No, it's always pastoral against church order, pastoral against church order. And she asked they asked the pastor to visit her and her husband because, as they say, it was beating her and demanding unreasonable sex. He was unreasonably jealous of her even when she attended a church council meeting, and then the pastor visited her. Her husband was not there, but the pastor invited her to visit the pastor with her husband. During the next church council meeting, the woman was in attendance. Then, when the husband called the pastor answered, though it's not becoming to do so during the church council meeting. The husband, who knew that the church council meeting was in progress, of course, because his wife was there, screamed at the pastor not to interfere in his affairs. The pastor again invited him and his wife for a conversation. The woman then got up, screamed at the church council that they were hopeless, and she left yelling that she was resigning this bunch of people. The church council then either had to accept her moral resignation or address her unacceptable behavior during the meeting. Church's strong rules about how to behave in a meeting. The woman then started spreading a story that the church council has visited her and they have not invited her back into the meeting, and that shows you that they didn't care for the members of the church. And the ethical considerations, again, intervening in personal affairs, again, then internal wars in the church council. When is the pastor? In our church order, the pastor abuses power and influences the church council to do something. You can actually dismiss that pastor. It's according to our church order. So you have to negotiate with the church council. Okay, let's look at number 5. I think you know number 5. An elder came to that 6 for those who are interested. An elder came to the church. An elder came to the church one Sunday morning with his face badly beaten and blood all over his church clothes. He asked to be excused from the Lord's Supper because of his appearance. The pastor encouraged him to wash off most of the blood on his face and clothes in the vestry, but to indeed attend the Lord's Supper as an elder. After the service, the pastor went to visit the wife. The wife is Musa. The pastor has previously experienced her to be quite a nice woman. That day she was not. She obviously had pain of her own. She screamed at the pastor that children are hungry and that she cannot live with a man who does not have a job. That if the pastor cares so much for him, why doesn't the pastor marry him? Keep him there in the pastor. So she chased the pastor away with the suggestion that the pastor's cry her from balls and get her husband a job. Okay, so I didn't put one of the ethical issues, gender as one of the ethical issues, but I think clearly gender, the fact that the pastor is a woman plays a role. So what are the ethical considerations here? Again, beginning intimate affairs, which is a very, very sensitive area for the pastor. We have to all day, when I was a student in practical theology, they told us that 95% of the pastoral work of the pastor is marriage counselling. That's what they told me now many years ago. But it seems to be still the case. But now, intervening in practical, in private affairs, in intimate spaces, has become a legal issue and an ethical issue. Using the authority of a pastor is from another religion. Only a woman, but from another religion. And one of the ethical considerations is, does the pastor have the competency to deal with these interreligious issues? Because it doesn't come by itself. It's something you have to be trained in. It's something that you need to be able to discuss in church meetings and at higher levels, on some level perhaps. Let's go to number 6, which is the last one. Attention internally on the church about burial criminals. And the story there is, the next slide. The minister says, Sister Rosie, I'm so sorry to hear that your brother died. May I ask, what was the cause of death? Early of Germany, he died while he was stealing electricity. He was shot to death and was a member of the church, although he did not come often. Of course, we shall bury him from the church, although I have to check with the church council. And then the ethics of burials, I don't know if you have to deal with this as well as pastors, but this pastor feels that I will bury everyone, whether you're a criminal, whether you are self-terminated, thank you for that, Professor again, whether you are a non-member. It was the very first time I preached at this congregation. I heard the elder said, luister, as julle nie julle dienes betaal nie, moet jy ook ek vir julle begrawe nie, maar. So there was this thing, if you don't pay your money to the church, you won't be buried from this church. That is still something that needs to be negotiated with the church council. Okay, then the last, let's just in conclusion, reveal the ethical considerations. The first one, ethical consideration, was to should the pastor intervene in congregants' private life because they are now seeking protection of privacy? Or you just say, I'm coming in, I'm going to do that, you have nothing to say about this. It's my job as pastor, it's the pastor, I have the authority now. Come into your private relationship. And I often hear, I'm a man, God has made you thus, it's not between me and God, you push off. Okay, then I think I didn't put that as an ethical consideration in gender issues, but I think in all the stories you can see there is a gender consideration. In any one of these situations, it was an issue that the woman asked is a woman. We simply looked at the usurping of religious authority, and we saw actually from these stories that the authority with which a pastor can intervene is small, even in a pre-secular society. Even in a society where everybody is religious, when it comes to your personal guilt and the authority, the religious authority of the pastor is not acknowledged, especially when she is a woman. And the imposing of religious values, as we have seen, there are entities in the community that do not accept religious values, such as gangs, and when it comes to the bottom things like using drugs, like things that concern you personally, it's very you do not accept the religious values, although you confess them Sunday in church. Then the violating of church-state boundaries. It's a very, very sensitive thing, and I don't see our churches really addressing it. There are laws that protect people and privacy, their human dignity. And when they're in opposition to one another, and the pastor starts intervening in that, it becomes really a legal issue. And then practicing outside the boundaries of competence. And I think that's very interesting and important when you train pastors. You say, but when you send the pastor out to a congregation, does that pastor have the competence to do counselling? Do they have the competence to deal with intimate relationships? Do they have the competence to deal with gangs? I mean, there's such an array of competencies that are now desired from the pastor. And then, of course, also the competency to deal with the fact that gender is still a very strong factor. Okay, so the last one. Oh my goodness. I just wanted to say thank you for giving me honorary membership for me. And present here, Professor Yolanda Dreyer. And I want to confront you with an article that giving me the opportunity to give this lecture. And you see, in that way, in 1978, we had an article. That's now 45 years ago. An article about two women students there. The beautiful one here on the bottom, that's me. That's me. We were complimented that we are going to become womanists. And Yolanda became a woman. She was in her third year there. When she finished the study, she was ordained as a woman. And I was ordained 30 years in 28. 30 years after 1978. I was also ordained as a woman. So that I'm actually ahead of time as becoming to a woman. So thank you so much.